Hey, I'm Father Mark Mary with the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, and this is Ascension Presents. Today, I'm going to present to you something super practical. It is the contentment check. Four times a year, we get together as a house, and we do a little time of examination of our own personal simplicity or poverty and that of our community. And as we talked about in the video last week, right, like the reason we want to keep it simple and the reason we want to stay on top of this is ultimately at the service of our intimacy and our fraternity, right? For at the service of a relationship with the Lord and with our brothers. So the first thing I'm going to encourage you to do is to schedule your contentment check, your simplicity check. If we can do it 4 times a year, that'd be great. So it's like January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, October 1st. You can do it personally. You can do it with your family. And so now we're going to lead you in it. And the first thing we want to do is kind of get rerouted in the why, in the inspiration of like, why simplicity? And so these are a couple of questions from Habits for Holiness, which has the contentment check actually as the appendix. So for example, is this like, what has inspired my understanding of Christian simplicity lately? It can be scripture. It can be some sort of reading. It can be some sort of work with the poor we've done. How have I been invited and encouraged to better understand Christian simplicity? Number 2 is like, we're imitating Jesus who became poor. Like, is there some component about the life of Christ and the poverty of Christ that I can reflect on and encourage me in my own simplicity? His birth in the manger, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head, his begging, there's no room in the inn, all this sort of stuff. Like Jesus became poor. Is there a way in which he's inviting us to a greater simplicity? Has there been any way in which I've had contact with Christ in the distress and disguise of the poor? One of the great encouragements for our own simplicity is solidarity. Is there any way I've had contact with the poor? Is there any way in the future I should schedule some sort of material contact, relational experience of Christ in the distress and disguise of the poor? Is there any way in which the Lord's inviting me to a greater trust? Right? Part of this poverty is a confidence in God's providence and a confidence in God's ability to satisfy our desires. Is there an invitation to trust and to allow God to father you by taking care of you? How am I doing with gratitude, right? Part of the struggle why we always want more is we're not grateful for what we have. Like, what am I grateful for? How am I practicing gratitude on a regular basis? Can I take a moment now to give God thanks for the ways in which he has already been caring for me? All right, now we'll get like a little bit more sort of practical. Like in these last few months, these last few years, whatever it's been, like, how's my relationship been with material things? Like, is there anything I've been spending like a bunch of time, resources, worrying about that I didn't need to? It can be again with our house, with our wardrobe, with sports, with entertainment, with status. Is there anything in which I'm like overly trying to consume, where maybe the Lord's inviting me to practice like contentment? Okay, no, I'm good. Am I protecting this peace and this contentment by being careful of what I look at, like what I'm feeding like my eyes, like? And so again, that can be literal window shopping when it's unnecessary. It can be internet window shopping, just scrolling. It can be being uncareful with what I'm looking at on social media, maybe not specifically shopping, but things that inspire me to want more. It can be going through like special housing magazines, clothing magazines, whatever. Like, is there anything I'm doing which is unsettling my peace by causing unnecessary desires or wants? If you've had the opportunity to practice a little bit of simplicity or contentment, has it borne any fruit? Is there any ways you're experiencing a greater freedom? Is there any way you're experiencing a greater intimacy in communion with your family or your friends and the Lord? Again, like, how's your prayer life going? Are there obstacles to your prayer life which are unnecessary, but are caused by kind of an overconsumption or trying to feed or support some sort of overconsumption? Do I experience some sort of burden by unnecessary wants and accumulation? Like, how am I like a little heart check? How am I feeling, and how's my relationship to stuff or to status? And is there an invitation in the Lord to a greater freedom? Have you had any experiences where you were like, okay, I could get this thing, or I could get this extra level of a thing, and I withheld? It's like, no, okay, I'm good. Either because I know I don't need it, or because I want to budget that to give to the poor. Like, was there any time in which you had this sort of a successful contentment check in your day-to-day life? If so, like, how did that feel? How did that bear fruit? Is there any ways I've just been wasteful, either with food or with spending? Again, just using money frivolously, unnecessarily, particularly without a mindfulness of the poor and those in need. How are you doing in your relationship with the poor, right? We understand that there are millions and millions of people in poverty. Am I keeping them in mind when I'm making a budget, when I'm spending, when I'm thinking about accumulating new things? Are there any ways in which I'm giving to the poor? If not, can I schedule some time, maybe 30 minutes, to brainstorm some charity I like to support? What am I passionate about? Who can I give to? If you've already committed to giving, have you been faithful to your commitment and to your pledges? Again, are you having any contact or direct service with the poor? If the reason you're not, again, is because you're spending a lot of time and energy on unnecessary things, can you take a step back from some of those things at the service of charity and caring for your brothers and sisters in need? Is there anything I've accumulated that's unnecessary, that's too much, that I can give either to a friend or to a family member or to somebody else who's in need? And lastly, just again this, is there any way in which my own living of simplicity has given me a greater insight into Jesus' own poverty and simplicity and his own humility? Is there any way in which following more closely the poor Christ has given me a deeper experience of his own relationship with our Father, who is overly wealthy in goodness and care and peace and love and courage and intimacy and all of that, which is ultimately the end, right? It's our simplicity, our contentment at the service of more closely imitating Jesus and entering into his own relationship with his Father. Again, my brothers and sisters, thank you for doing this contentment check. I'd encourage you to try and do it quarterly. If you want to just read it, and I think there's a really thorough and good one in Habits for Holiness. In the back, you can still get Habits for Holiness. But thank you for praying with us and entering into this contentment check. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Remember, we are pilgrims on this earth. Somos peregrinos, poco a poco, little by little. Vamos a llegar. We're going to make it. God bless you.